Hello gamers and welcome to Game Warp. I'm Elwood.
I'm Kim.
And this is our review of number 70, Eye of Basir. Eye of Basir is a psychological horror shot from a first-person perspective. This has also been a unique experience for ourselves, being it's probably our first game from Turkey that we've obviously played. The game itself sees Aris and Eren, who have spent their childhood with their grandmother in the house number 70, in which they encounter paranormal activity they couldn't fathom, and after the death of their grandmother, the brothers have split up and started to live their own lives. Now, 20 years later, the brothers have reunited. Both Eren is a successful archaeologist, while Aris is a creative director. Now, in the morning, Eren realizes that something doesn't feel right, and while he's trying to figure it out, vanishes mysteriously into thin air. Now, Aris cannot receive anything sort of contact from Eren in a long time, and decides to go after his brother, along the way uncovering the many secrets of both Basir as well as the house number 70 holds within. This is certainly a unique game. It's visually very stunning, but at the same time its gameplay is extremely hollow. Kim, I mean, what was your opening thoughts on number 70, Eye of Basir?
I think you pretty much covered most of it. It's visually beautiful, and I really think that it's for the fact that Old Mustache Gameworks, which is the development company for this one, for Eye of Basir, which is based out of Turkey, really is searching for an atmospheric sort of creepy vibe to go with their VR titles. And it seems like their company seems to want to focus mostly on VR titles as well, if you take a quick look at their website. I mean, this game is atmosphere-wise. You walk through in the beginning. It does feel very creepy. There is some very cliche kind of cliche atmospheric things, like, creepy children and creepy pictures and creepy old ladies and all over the house. It's just a bunch of creepy stuff. And you got doors that open when you trigger certain things, and the game is fairly linear in that sense, except that there is that whole aspect of, you make a really good point, that it's hollow, because it really is a fetch quest. You go one place, you have to find something, do something else, and then, like, for example, we have to find you have to find two grandfather clock thingamajigs or scissors or something, and then I don't know what that is, and then you put it on the grandfather clock, and then it opens something else, and then you find something else, and then you go something else, and you walk from one side of the house to the next, and it'll trigger a door, and it'll mysteriously open, and then you'll trigger something else, and that sort of gameplay is okay for a little while, and then it gets fairly boring. Mostly because you're walking over and over, and the pixels were never very, like, I think, like, it was like the space of trigger was so small that, many times I found myself, like, without any clues, and I was just carpet searching, like, the entire screen. And that kind of really takes you out of the experience.
Yeah, certainly. This game, you can't decide whether it's a walking simulator or a tidy-up simulator, seeing as all your puzzles seem to revolve around you finding something and putting it back where it's supposed to belong. That seemed to be the extent for the most part of the puzzle element. Yeah, there is certainly a lot of atmosphere to it, but when you're plodding around, and we do actually mean that, there is no option to really run. You can perhaps walk a little faster, which means that it takes forever to get anywhere in this game. And that, combined with the fact that this doesn't use the arrow control system, instead this is using the WSDA system instead.
WASD?
Yeah. Which I'm told, like, the hip young gamers, they're able to get on with fine, and it's just the old people like myself who own a bigger desk that prefer the old arrow keys. At the same time, we did also run this through we got hold of some 3D tech to just run a test on this, just to obviously make sure that it wasn't a title that was designed for 3D tech, and that we were just obviously missing some part of the valuable experience by just running it as a normal 2D simulation. And yes, it is certainly very immersive as a 3D title, but at the same time, there's probably more exciting worlds that you can immerse yourself in if you're going to spend that much on 3D tech to begin with. You kind of want something to happen. It's basically like you could pretty much have the same experience walking around your own house. And probably
just close
much
all the lights.
Yeah,
imagine there's ghosts.
Exactly. Yeah, you probably have a lot more fun. And when we finally get hold of the Eye of Basir, this thingamagaffin for this whole game, which is built up so much, and we find out it's just basically a spectral analyzer, the same as we saw in 13 Ghosts, you can't help but feel a little deflated. I mean, yes, we're getting to see some creepy ghost atmosphere. We get to see a painting which has now got a spooky face, but it really wasn't the binding thing that this game really is going to hang off. And sure, we spend a good hour and a half wandering around the house in the first level, and then we're outside, and it's pretty much, again, it's just this very on rails area that you can explore. And this is only, again, made more frustration by the fact there is no save points in this. It's only once you complete a level that you get to save the game.
So, like that's a really solid point, is the save points only save after each chapter. And there are, I think, 3 chapters or something, 3 or 4 chapters or something like that. I can't remember. And exactly, that was a problem, is this game is full of bugs. And that was one of the problems that hit me the most, because playing games like Batman or something that requires so much more, of the graphics and all that, never really had trouble with my computer. And yet, I loaded up this game. Before I even started, it crashed. So, okay, I restarted it. That's fine, And then I get my hands on the Eye of Basir, which is, I think, approaching the end of probably chapter 1. But I had to do this series of puzzles and then get through a door. And by the time I opened the damn door, I clipped into the door and I couldn't move anymore. So, bug number 2. Old Mustache Gameworks, if you're listening to this, please fix this issue, because I stopped the game. I had to stop the game. I had no choice. And then I started it back up, and it was at the beginning of chapter 1. There was no way I was spending another 55 minutes trotting around and just taking a leisurely stroll, finding the stuff and putting everything back into place, I mean, I have other games that work perfectly well, which I could be playing instead of wasting another 50 minutes of my life doing this, right? And that's one of the key issues, is that you don't want to make it in a situation where there are so many things that are not ready. You have bugs, and then you have loading problems, and then you have, there was even, subtitles problems during that scene where, the guy was talking and the subtitles were one set of words slower. So you heard the guy talk, and then the subtitles would appear when he was saying the next line. And these are all things that could be fixed. They're all things that is a lack of detail when you went into game testing, or you went into, just before you launch a game. It made me question, did they actually play through the game themselves? Did they give it to someone to play? Because these are not things you miss. Sure, okay, maybe you'll clip through the door, and it's something that happens 3% of the time, but it's still something that happens, and it's something that, maybe I just broke the game. I clicked the wrong pixel and I broke the game. What can I say? But it is something that needs to be looked at, because, if that's going to happen, then remedy the save points. You don't want to fix the bugs. You can't avoid the bugs. Then remedy the save points, because no one's going to want to waste their time. And then, because it's a very huge chore to do that. I don't know. I mean, that's just my idea of it. The game is very reminiscent of, actually, when it started, it was very reminiscent of Layers of Fear. And Layers of Fear is a very similar sort of experience, more of a walking simulator. But it's very solid in the sense that it runs very smoothly, and there was never any issues with it. And I think that, sure, maybe not never, maybe other people have got issues, but, for myself, it ran very smoothly, and it actually had a similar atmosphere that worked much better in a psychedelic way. But, I mean, those are, it's sad, because this game has a lot of elements that work. The voice acting is decent. The atmosphere is decent. The sound design is decent. And the visuals are beautiful. But yet, these little things combined together make for the gameplay and the experience to really diminish.
Yeah. I think that one of my biggest issues was the fact that we have all this wonderful atmosphere building up with the sound design and certainly with the styling of the game, and then as soon as we find this scrap of paper, and then it just suddenly like cuts to silence, and it just kills any atmosphere whenever we get some little bit of backstory with a little bit of chapter and stuff, because you're essentially reading character profiles a lot of the time. It's never anything especially interesting that you're reading. It's sort of like, oh, this is what this character did, and this is who this character is, and it's sort of like, I just felt my my will to stick with the game dying a little every time I encountered those. Much like the fact that whenever I encountered like a wall or something, it was always like, go put this back where you found it, where it should be, and stuff. And it's sort of like, am I here to be scared or to tidy this person's house? It's, as we said before, I don't know. Is this a walking simulator? Is it a cleaning simulator? You know, let us know in the comment section if you played this game, what you define this game as, because we were more than a little stumped as to what we were supposed to be saying with this. As I said, it just did not work for me on sort of like that base level. I felt that we had the frame of a good game there, but it was like missing the actual content needed to make it work. It makes me think again of like when we looked at Seasons After Fall, which again was a game which had a wonderful framework, but the fact there was no element of danger in that, there was no actual peril that your character faced, it just meant it didn't work. And here we have pretty much the same case. We have this beautiful framework, but we have no gameplay here. It's lacking in gameplay, and that's what kills it, along with the many other issues that can be attributed obviously to the design and perhaps better playtesting being required. When you're looking for key items and it's all down to the different color of your pixel, then it becomes more than a little frustrating. As I said, you're just screen swiping to try and find those missing pieces, and that does not make for the sort of game that you want to be putting your time into. Really, you want something a little clearer, and it's the sort of thing that we'd expect perhaps with like an older title, something like of the early 2000s, when we look at something like Blade Runner, which again had that notorious find the pixel moments with it throughout it. Now we're obviously 2017, gaming has moved on. We shouldn't be expecting to obviously have encounter these same sort of issues.
But see, that's the thing is, I think that people who do VR games, horror games particularly, already feel that the immersiveness of the environment will be enough to push you through. But you also have to be able to remember, and I say this in the most constructive way, and that a game's generic things, like all the beautiful things that you can put in, will be killed by a generic gameplay, and like a generic game design. And fetch quests are all over Steam. Horror games in general tend to be that way. There's a lot of walking simulators. They're a dime a dozen, But you have to be careful in the sense that when you make a game and I can see the passion and the amount of work that's put into this to make this look so good that, a lot of little details, just, putting more of the effort into play testing and stuff like that, it really makes a difference in the immersiveness, and just to, maybe quicken up the steps, maybe, things like that, just make your cursor a little bigger so that it's not like a tiny little dot on your screen that turns red. I know it seems to pull you out of the experience because, if your point is too big, then it kind of like it's just like a mouse on your screen, and that's kind of disturbing. But, when something is something like this, which is kind of partially point and click, you kind of need to make it a little bit easier. And I mean, like I said, I want this game to work, and I hope that, if and maybe like, sure, this is still early in release, maybe with a few more updates and a few more patches, this could be a really solid game,
Okay, so what are we rating number 70, Eye of Basir?
That's probably the lowest score we've given so far. I'm going to be giving it a 2 out of 5. How about yourself?
Yep, I totally agree with yourself. This is a 2 out of 5 experience. As I said, we've said before, there's a frame there of what could have been potentially a great game. At the same time, it's lacking many elements, and you feel that something in its development needed to be changed to recognize these issues earlier on. The fact that it's made it to marketplace with such issues is just absolutely astounding, and it makes me wonder how these things have always been looked, especially when they're such base level things. So this isn't the fact that perhaps it's a small team. These are very base level design flaws that just general playtesting I would have thought would have highlighted. The bugs aside, just in terms of the general gameplay, that we have these obvious issues stops me from obviously rating it higher. It's a very pretty game to look at, but at the same time, without that involvement, without giving the player something to actually do that's going to hold their attention, it's just a pretty experience. Something to show off your VR tech with without making you look like too bad a gamer, I guess, or something like that. That's the only thing I could think you could use this game for, really.
Mm-hmm. So this wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read more gaming reviews. To get gaming news and releases every single day, you can follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. You can hang out with us on our Twitch channel where we stream at Game Warp Podcast, and also follow our current gaming obsessions on Instagram with the handle Game Warp Podcast. Till next time, bye!